Welcome back. So now we'll talk about the next two games. Dolphins against Titans. Another two different conference teams clashing in the final 8. Now, Dolphins, as we know, came back from a deficit and won their game against MFM the first day. And now they came up with the same spirit, the same fire, and they just couldn't be stopped by Titans. This game was a game that, was unpredictable, being that Titans are the number 1 team in the Savannah Conference, and the Dolphins team are ranked number 3 in the Atlantic Conference. But we know the Dolphins seem to be a, go-getter team. They would fight from the beginning to the end, and the Titans team have also sustained their own bragging rights so far in the tournament. So Dolphins had a great ball distribution leading to points. There were 3 points that kicked in the beginning of that game. Almost every player was scoring from every corner. Tewobade, Awele. The first quarter, we had different players scoring from different points. Post players, they were not taking advantage of their size inside and the opportunities that they had in the paint, but the guards outside were doing a great job. There was good court vision. There was this way that they were selling the defense, making it look like they were going to pass the ball one way, but then they passed the ball the other way. The guards were confused on the Titans side. They didn't know how to guard them. In fact, they couldn't be stopped. Their 3 points was on fire. They came with the same fire that they had in the first quarter, in the third and the last quarter as well. Defensively, they were pressuring Titans. They were in their faces on defense, not letting them get a breather to look to get the pass or to look for the open player. There were quick switches. It's the same thing that they do with the MFM team. They switch on the guards to guard, post to post. Dolphins team are a team that are very prone to fouling. And that's something that every team, this is an expo I'm giving to every team. Dolphins team always have 3 to 4 fouls, 3 minutes or even 2 minutes into the first minutes of the quarter. So if every team can scout the Dolphins team, they'll be able to use those fouls to their advantage. I think that's partly because of how quickly they move. So sometimes they're not able to control their movements, so it leads them to fouling. They outworked the Titans in this game. In fact, I didn't see a blowout between these two teams, honestly. I thought it was going to be a neck-and-neck game, but they outworked the Titans team. They didn't even know what to do. Nobody could come out to step on any player because, okay, if you want to step on Tero, somebody else is hot. Like almost everybody on the team, on the Dolphins team, was hot yesterday. The Titans team, on the other hand, offensively, they were not able to find any good looks because, of course, Dolphins were all up in their faces, putting that pressure defensively. There was a timeout called within 5 minutes and 41 seconds, and that timeout was well needed. There are some times when a team will be having a very good run, and I'll be expecting the coach of the other team to call a timeout. You have, 3 timeouts in every quarter, so you can call a timeout to talk to your team and kind of end that energy or end that pressure that the other team has, end their run. But no, if you let them continue, then they'll just keep beating your team, and that's not very good. But that timeout helped them. They were now at some point, I think after that timeout, they were able to notice that Dolphins had fouled, had so many fouls, and they were able to start to use it to their advantage and get into the free throw line. But then they were missing almost all of their free throws. Every player on the team came on the free throw line, scored one and missed the other one. It's not a very good thing for them. In fact, their free throw percentage is 50% on the free throw, and that could have been 100 if they had consistently scored their free throws. There's no follow-up on fast breaks, so if they have any opportunities where a player gets a fast break opportunity, there's nobody coming behind. So if she misses it, for instance, they can get the rebound and put back. So that's something that the Titans team need to look out for. 3 minutes left in the second quarter, they started to cut down the points. They were down by more than 12, 15 points, but they started to cut down the points until it was just a 5 points game. But all of a sudden, Dolphins came back and they started to take them, and it was just game over at that point because they couldn't be stopped. The way they were shooting and scoring their 3 points in the first quarter, they brought it back in towards the end of the third quarter and in the fourth quarter, and in fact, it was just game over. They were not taking advantage of Dolphins' foul deficits, and they lacked communication defensively in how they were rotating. Two people will be going to one ball, just like what the Air Warriors were doing as well. They were crashing in and getting the rebounds for second chances, but then when fouled, they don't get to score both free throws. But then eventually they started to play some help defense, which helped them to, start to slow down Dolphins a little bit. But Dolphins were just scoring too much, so the scoring just couldn't stop. And that is where it comes down to players taking pride in a game. I mean, yes, the coaches expect you to do a setting or run a certain sets play or do a certain thing on the court, but you as a player, you've worked out, you've trained, you've prepared for a competition, and then you should have some pride. There's a way the game will be going, and you look at it and you be like, no, this cannot continue. This player is killing us. I'm going to take this player personally. You have to take things personally, otherwise you just keep running around and players will just keep having fun in the game. So anyhow, that's the game between the Dolphins team and the Titans team. It was a great game for Dolphins, and of course a game that the Titans would definitely go back and watch and see how they can correct those mistakes so that they can come back, because they have another tough game against MFN today. Now let's talk about First Bank and the Royal Aces, which was the last game for the day. First Bank started strong. I guess they learned from their lessons against Bayelsa not to come in slow or slacking. So they came out strong. In fact, Enobong was leading that team with the points from the beginning. She was on fire. She was selecting her shots and making good shots. There was great court vision, of course, by Naomi to Marvelous. There was one incredible pass that she gave to Marvelous, and Marvelous scored. Was that give and go between the two of them. She's an efficient guard, that is Naomi. She's one of the fastest and most experienced and intelligent guards that Nigeria has right now. The guards and the post on the First Bank team were really efficient. Their moves, their decisions were effective to the points that they were giving to their team. There was back-to-back threes from Joy, also one of the most experienced guards in the league right now. She was just on fire with her 3 points in the first half of the game and also in the second half of the game. The Royal Aces were playing a matchup zone defense against First Bank. They recognized that, and because they were able to penetrate through those little loopholes and drop the passes out to the guards, they were able to render that whole matchup zone defense just useless. Defensively, First Bank were covering all the loose ends with their efficient defensive tactics. They do a very good job keeping their opponents to just one possession games. But then there are some lapses in their defense. Despite how close their defense is, how tight it was, they were unable to completely stop the Aces from still, finding their ways into the paint and just getting those balls to their post players, or even the guards driving in from the top to scoring. Because of those lapses, allowing those second chance points at some point in the game, Aces were able to look for those open spaces and score. And then one thing I noticed about First Bank's game is they were rushing at some points. Aces were trying to catch up to them, and they were also rushing the game. Even when it was close to the end of the game and they were leading, they started to rush. They would take the lead by 7 points or 12 points, and then Aces will cover it back, and then it would be a 5-point game. So they were just going back and forth like that. And at some point, I'm like, do First Bank realize that they are up? They need to control the pace of the game and stop rushing, or letting the Aces team control the pace of the game. But hey, everybody wants to win. The Royal Aces, on the other hand, offensively, they still had a few good runs. They still had a few good possessions. There were too many turnovers on their own part that was, not necessarily caused by First Bank, but by them, because players get the ball and they don't look up properly to see if their teammates is available or at the right place to get the pass. They just throw it, and those are turnovers that, was not good for them, that killed them in the end. I love how they played offensively against First Bank. They were shooting from the outside. I mean, Mufe was there shooting. Okeke Chidinma as well. She was effective for them, and in the paint, Ogedengbe was everywhere, at some points she couldn't be stopped, and then there was also Sumbo at some point who came in and did, her thing a little bit. We know Sumbo used to play for First Bank, but now she's playing for the other side, which is the Royal Aces. Defensively, the Royal Aces didn't put as much pressure on First Bank as they should have. First Bank is a team that sometimes can get the jitters depending on how you play against them. You have to be, psychologically prepared to play a team like First Bank. You have to get into their heads and then use that to your advantage. But they didn't, put so much pressure on them, and that's how First Bank were able to stay a bit more comfortable in that game than they did. And with the pace and the energy being exerted by both teams, it's surprising how, the scoreline ended up in that game. Players have to do better at scoring because the energy sometimes that they put into the game is not, reflecting in the scoreline. Some players that stood out in this game between the Realized Aces and First Bank. For First Bank, we have Joy Ebiega with 11 points, Abel Marvelous with 8 points. She was incredible inside. Gift Enobong Joseph with 8 points as well, and then Marilyn with 8 rebounds and 6 points. And then for the Royal Aces, we have Ogedengbe Bidemi with 13 points and 10 rebounds. Like I said, she was almost unstoppable. Mofelo Lua had 11 points, and then Okeke Chidima had 9 points and 4 rebounds. And we know Okeke Chidima to be one of the fastest and most experienced guys as well in the Nigerian Zenith Bank League. Well, that is day 2 of the games. Today we're going to be seeing more games in the group stage before we start to finalize the people that have qualified for the semi-finals and then of course the finals. So until my next video, leave your comments, share and like. Teresa out.